Guys, you're amazing. It's the second time they've done that this morning. It's just been incredible worshiping with them today. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. Sweet. So I don't know about you, but I typically kind of refer to myself as the pack mule of my family because just about everywhere we go, I'm carrying something that doesn't belong to me. So when it comes to long trips, being the pack mule means that I pack the van or whatever car we're going in. And I take great pride in doing that well. It's kind of a fun game of Tetris for me. Sometimes it drives you insane, but usually everybody comfortably and safely has a space for their stuff and all the things in the car. So it's kind of a thing for me. There's a whole process with it. Well, one time we were at my parents' house in Indiana, and I wasn't feeling very good, and I took a nap, and, well, Stephanie thought she'd be super helpful, and you can probably tell where this is going. She decided to pack the car for me to do me a favor. Really good. She was kind of a little frustrated that things hadn't been done already, but she, had a lot of grace for me because I wasn't feeling super good, and so she was like, well, I'm just going to take care of that little detail. She doesn't care quite as much, or not at all as much as I do about how it's packed or whether or not things get broken and all the things in the process. She just wants to get where we're going. So, she packed the car, and I woke up from my nap, and lo and behold, the car's packed, and I'm like, oh, boy. So I did as one does, and I briskly walked to the car to see what had happened, and I opened the back hatch. 2 bags fell out, and I caught a third item before it hit the ground, and my fuse was lit. My process had been violated. It's like a turf war sometimes in families, right? You got certain jobs that you're like, this is my thing, don't touch it, right? So that's kind of how it was for me that moment. I proceeded to hurt Stephanie's feelings, said a few choice words to my own self, just in anger, and then I started focusing on packing the van the right way, right? So, I kind of passive-aggressively, through gritted teeth, kind of pulled some things out of the van. Other things was more like actively, aggressively, like tossing them out as I went. And, before long, I had that repacked and we were ready to go. I spent like the next hour just apologizing because I realized that I was out of line. I had a lot of feelings as I look back at that. Over that 30 or 45 minute kind of period of time, I was confused, I was frustrated, I felt justified on some level, even energized a little bit. I also felt ashamed and super embarrassed of how I behaved and that I hurt Stephanie's feelings in the process of this issue that we were facing. And, they have a word for all of those feelings when they combine together. It's called anger, right? A lot of us deal with anger, and we want to talk about anger today. When you kind of step back and look at your life, it's kind of odd sometimes. You look at these kind of situations, and you're like, sometimes it's super silly and sometimes really tragic to admit the things that we get angry about. It might feel embarrassing or even shameful to admit the things that get under our skin regularly. And for some of us, anger has become like an emotional bulldozer. It is a destructive force that is shaping the internal landscape of our lives. And it can be difficult to understand anger. It can be difficult to know how to treat it when it shows up in our life. It can hold us captive, to refer to our series that we're in right now. It can hold us captive occasionally, or for some of us, it can hold us captive consistently. So where does your anger lie today? Maybe it's not super evident while you're sitting here comfortably in this room, but look over the past 24 hours. Look over the past week of your life. What are the things that you have been angry about? And maybe more importantly, who has felt the effects of your anger over that period of time? We're going to address some of that today. One of the kings of the Old Testament of Israel, Solomon, he prayed to God for one thing especially, more than anything else. He prayed for wisdom. And about 80 or 90% of life is all about wisdom. It's the ability to go beyond the rules, beyond the letter of the law, to decide between right and wrong, good and evil, and be able to chart the best course in any given situation. And I feel like we have an enormous crisis of wisdom, the lack of wisdom in our society today. It's probably why we witness and we experience so much rampant anger in everyday life. We've got few people who are able to really go beyond the letter of the law and still do what is right and good. And especially when it comes to this issue of managing the emotion of anger, wisdom is required. It is necessary if we're going to be able to navigate that. Pastor Timothy Keller, he said once, it's anger that is the dynamite of the soul. It has the power to disintegrate things, to pulverize things like an explosive. Anger disintegrates many things in our lives, but it particularly disintegrates our ability to gain and exercise wisdom. We end up taking all kinds of distorted perspectives, and when anger shows up, we end up really off track. It throws us. And so we really need God's word and his Spirit to bring us back into right understanding. And speaking of God's word, did you know, it's not really talked about super often, but the Bible basically sees anger in a positive light. We could probably summarize at least somewhat of what the Bible's perspective is on anger with this simple statement: anger is essentially a function of love. Anger is a function of love. Think about that. Think about God himself. We don't really talk about this particular aspect of God's character very much, but over and over and over in the Bible, this God that we love, a God who is love himself, he gives love its very definition. That God is revealed as a God that is slow to anger. In Exodus 33 and 34, Moses has this amazing experience with God, and in that he says, God, show me your glory. It's like, show me your magnificence. I want to see your beauty. I want to know who you are. I want to see you fully. Now, God agreed to pass by Moses and reveal himself by proclaiming his name as he passed by. So God says, as he passes by Moses, the Lord, it's Yahweh, Yahweh, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger. It's like the second thing he says about himself. Abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, forgiving wickedness and rebellion and sin. He does not leave the guilty unpunished, though. He punishes the children and their children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation. It's a powerful set of statements there. And Moses heard these words, and it says he bowed to the ground at once and worshiped. What God was telling Moses is that this is part of my glory. You have to understand this. If you're going to know me, I get angry, but I'm slow about it. I have a long fuse. A lot of contemporary people get in trouble here theologically. People say all the time, I hear this over and over in various versions, I believe in a God of love, not a God who gets angry. Well, I say, great. You're free to believe in that God. That's just not the God that's revealed in the Bible. Timothy Keller stated, if you have a God who never gets angry, you can't have a God of love, because if you never get angry, ever, about anything, you don't love anything. Because if you love and you see the thing that you love threatened, you're angry. If you're indifferent, you're not in love. Another author said it well. Anger isn't the opposite of love, hate is. And the final form of hate is indifference. True love always gets angry. Anger is love in motion towards a threat to that which we love. Anger is love in motion towards a threat to that which you love. That's why anger disintegrates. That's why it pulverizes, because something or someone that we love is endangered. So anger moves us, it motivates us to destroy that threat. So when you get angry, maybe one of the primary questions you could ask yourself is, what am I defending right now? Look over the things that you get angry about. A few of them at least might come to your mind. Your answer to that question, what am I defending, will reveal to you the things that you really love most. And when God gets angry in the Bible as well as in our own lives, what is he defending? He's defending people, his connection with people. People are the subjects, the recipients of his love. So he defends people. We need to understand that it's because God loves us that he's spitting mad about sin and about evil that prevents us from being unified with him. It keeps us from living into the fullness of who he's made us to be. Sin and the devil are the greatest threats to those he loves, and he cannot, because he is love itself, he cannot sit back in indifference and leave those things undealt with. He gets angry because he loves. And he gets angry, but he does not sin. He is perfect love, so he can be perfect anger also. I want to make a brief caveat here. As some of us have been involved in some abusive relationships, whether we were young or even in our adult years, domestic violence situations and whatnot. And someone may have said to you along the way, well, that's why I get angry, because I love you so much. I got to be careful because I'll get fired up about that. Some of us may have thought or said those words to legitimize our anger and mistreatment of others. And I just have to say a really clear no to that. That's really bad thinking, really bad talking, and really bad theology. That's a twisting of the truth. The kind of love described in that statement is a disordered love, a love that seeks to control, to empower one individual or one party over another in the relationship. That's powered by an insecure ego. But a well-ordered love is freeing. It edifies both parties. That means it builds up both parties in a relationship. It's powered by a secure self-sacrifice and servanthood, not an insecure ego. By the way, this doesn't just happen in domestic situations. This happens in corporations. This happens in our neighborhoods. This happens in our activities and our kids, parents that we're associated with, all kinds of stuff at school, et cetera, et cetera. This happens all over the place. This lie finds its way into so many relationships. St. Augustine said that our great problem is that we have disordered loves. Our good and appropriate loves become disordered when we take good things and we turn them into ultimate things to be worshiped. Our disordered love leads us to disordered anger. And because our culture has kind of trained us, sometimes really covertly, to be impulsive, individualistic, and just constantly in a rush, racing around. When a strong emotion like anger comes up, we just jump immediately into action. We don't even think about it. Our disordered love has been threatened, and so we act in a disordered fashion to protect it. We react instead of reflect. Often that leads us to sin against ourselves, against others, against God. Because our love is disordered, our anger ends up being misplaced, and we protect the wrong things. We need God's word to help us out here, and I can think of no better place to go than a letter written by the Apostle Paul, Ephesians chapter 4. If you have your Bible or Bible app, you can turn there. It'll be on the screen too. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 26 and 27. It's a great place to begin in understanding and dealing with anger. There's three basic statements here. Paul says, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. Now, this guy, Paul, he wrote these words from prison to a group of metropolitan kind of city-dwelling folks in a major city called Ephesus at the time. In the first segment, he shows his understanding of the Old Testament because he's quoting Psalm 4 here. And he says, in your anger, do not sin. Notice a couple things about this brief segment. This is real important. First, anger doesn't automatically equal sin. Anger and sin are not the same thing. If you follow Jesus for any length of time, maybe you've been taught somewhere along the way something like this. Real Christians don't get angry. Maybe it's been even worse than that. We don't get angry, we get even. That's real Old Testament. Both of those statements are really bad understandings of God's character and the gospel. So we got to correct that with Paul's words here today. Paul was saying when Christians get angry, they should resist allowing their anger to drive them into sin against others and against God. Paul accepted that anger is a normal human emotion. It's not evil in and of itself. It's not a matter of if we get angry, but when we get angry. So anger is not automatically a sin. But he goes further. Notice this as well. Anger doesn't automatically lead to sin. Paul fully believed that it was possible to not sin when we are angry. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said this word of advice. We have a choice, and in Christ, it's possible to refrain from sin even when real strong emotions like anger show up in our lives. An amazing minister and author, Henry Nouwen, said it like this: we cannot love issues, but we can love people. And the love of people reveals to us the way to deal with issues. If our anger stems from loving issues and not from trying to love people, we sin. So when we're angry, we really need to examine our loves by understanding what we're trying so hard to defend, so we can rightly choose to love the person or people in front of us instead of the impersonal issue that we're grinding our axe on. When we love people, in fact, we will better understand what to do with the issues that we face together. So anger is not the same as sin, and anger doesn't automatically lead to sin. In your anger, do not sin, Paul says. But he goes on and says, do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. Stephanie and I are going to celebrate 25 years of marriage coming up on April 30th. It's pretty amazing. Can't even believe it. Can you believe that she's put up with me that long? It's pretty crazy. Yeah. I think somebody maybe should get her a sympathy card or something for our anniversary. Just be like, yeah, we feel for you. So anyways, over the years, whether it's people giving us the advice or just I'm overhearing people give others advice along the way, this verse comes up and people will say things like, don't ever go to bed angry. Anybody ever heard that? So I appreciate the attempt that people are making there, and I see how it attaches to this particular word of Scripture. I'd like to think that through a little bit more deeply, because some of the worst moments in our marriage have come late at night when both of us are functioning on minimal sleep and maximum pressure. Sometimes we just need to get rest because things look a whole lot different in the morning. Just hear me now. This is the thing. Setting this particular verse, or really any, you can take this principle anywhere, setting this verse as a law in your life will totally lead to misery. But if you set this verse as a heart posture, that will be life-giving. Here's the difference. Letter of the law, don't ever go to bed angry. That's very hard, very harsh. But a heart posture of love says this: don't let your anger go dark. Keep your anger in the light. If my anger is in the light, I haven't let the light go down while I'm still angry. My anger won't turn cancerous if it's still exposed to the light. I need to keep it there until it's resolved, until it's healed. Remember what Henry Nouwen said: we cannot love issues, but we can love people. The love of people reveals to us the way to deal with issues. All of that means that I need to take on a heart posture, not live by a letter of a law, but take on a heart posture that positions me best to love Stephanie. Or maybe one of my kids, or maybe a coworker, or whoever I might be in conversation with at any given moment. My anger is a function of my love. I've got to understand that. Rightly ordered anger will cause me to protect the relationship, even against, against all odds, against all enemies. I think too often our anger stems from a disordered love of self. Think about the moments when you get angry, when you fight with those who you love deeply. Many times it's a reflection of a disordered love of self. So in those instances, we weaponize our anger, even against people we care deeply about. We lash out because we're trying to preserve ourselves. But well-ordered love leads us to self-sacrifice. It stems from a desire to protect our connection, our relationship. Don't allow your anger to go dark. Keep it in the light. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry. Now, Paul said also, do not give the devil a foothold. That's the third thing he says here in Ephesians 4. There's two really important words in that statement, give and foothold. Give could be translated offer or grant or bestow, permit or furnish. There's a lot of words there that could be inserted there to mean the same thing or give some nuances of that. Foothold is a word, topos. It means place or seat or opportunity. So what Paul is saying is don't offer the devil a place in your life. Don't furnish the devil a seat at your table. Don't grant the devil an opportunity to influence you. Earlier we said that anger isn't the same thing as sin, and anger doesn't automatically lead to sin. We have a choice. Well, the space that God has given us to choose to exercise our will, that space can become the topos, the opportunity of the devil when we give him room to plant a lie or a temptation in our hearts. Often we don't see that. We're going too fast through life. We don't see the foothold that we've given him until after the effects have come out of our life. Our words and actions expose the disordered motives of our hearts. Now, here's an interesting way to think about that, like on the ground running. When it comes to people's words, they usually come out in one of three ways. I think you'll find that there are spewers, there are stewers, and there are skewers. There was a fourth category I had, but I couldn't find a rhyming word, so we're just going to let that one be, and we're going to stick with three today, okay? Let's start with spewers. Makes me think of Wayne's World. Anybody? Yep. Often people vomit up their thoughts and feelings, get them out on the table, so to speak, to work through them. And there can be some helpful authenticity in doing that, but most spewers don't realize that they come across like tornadoes as they share, tearing up all kinds of relational real estate just to be genuine and truthful. They often mistake their truth for the truth, and they can hurt others in the process of trying even legitimately to help a situation. So the Bible has a word of instruction for spewers. Proverbs 29 says, a short-sighted fool always loses his or her temper and displays his or her anger. But a wise man or woman uses self-control and holds that anger back. Guys, verbal processing is different than verbal attack. And self-control is the difference that this verse in Proverbs talks about. Now, there's not only spewers, but there's stewers. On the other side of things, people often hold in their anger and they let it simmer until it comes to this boil. They wait, and sometimes it's honest, like they are hoping that the temperature, their internal temperature, will eventually come down, hoping that others will recognize their offenses and without having to be told and take care of business there. But then sometimes it gets worse. Their motives are more like they hope people get what they deserve. At some point, offenses stack up in a steward's life. And when they do, whoever is around that steward will be feeling the full weight of the intensity of that person's anger. Stewards feel like volcanoes that erupt without warning. Often there's a lot of collateral damage to clean up. The Bible also has some instruction for stewards. Psalm 32 says, when I kept silent about my sin, what sin? The sin of holding a grudge, the sin of keeping track of offenses, the sin of silence itself. Think about that. When we are supposed to speak a word and we refrain from it, that's sin. When I kept silent about my sin, my body wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night, your hand of displeasure was heavy upon me. You felt that conviction. My energy was just drained as with the burning heat of summer. But I acknowledged my sin to you. I let it come out in the open. I didn't keep it shoved down, boiling. I did not hide my wickedness. I said, I will confess all my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. Amen. Guys, silence is different than the silent treatment. Forgiveness, received and then given, is the difference between the two. We also have skewers. And in a culture of constant exposure, criticism, competition, many people have become highly skilled in the art of sarcasm. Our friend Dr. Buddy Rydell from the movie Anger Management says that sarcasm is anger's ugly cousin. So be careful. Think about that. How much sarcasm is thrown around on social media and in conversation. Many people have become skilled in the art of duplicity, living a double life. There's one life online and one life that's real. The art of the fine print and the ever-entertaining roast. People who skewer others, they surgically wound with their anger, many times bending or skewing the truth in the process. They feel like lightning when they strike, and they can even energize others with their deadly force. I'd like to say a bunch more about skewers, but I won't, because I think I'll probably be skewering them if I say more about it. I think you get what I mean. And there's some instruction in the Bible for skewers as well. This is from Proverbs 14. It says, the wicked is overthrown through his or her own wrongdoing. What that means is the roast always comes back around, doesn't it? The wicked is overthrown by his or her own wrongdoing, but the righteous has hope and confidence and a refuge with God, even in death. Even if people murder your reputation, you have a hope and a confidence and a refuge with God. These are just a few of the pitfalls. There's others as well. But the point that Paul really wanted to make with these Ephesians is that if you give the devil an inch, he will for sure, you can just put it on the board, he will take a mile. So if you're a spewer or a stewer or a skewer, stop. Don't leave any room. Don't give the devil an opportunity. It's kind of like Cain and Abel. It reminds me of them, the first sons of Adam and Eve. Cain's sacrifice was rejected because he gave his leftovers. He did not do what was right. Abel's sacrifice was accepted because he gave his first and best fruits. And so Cain, because of his rejection, he was so consumed by his own rage that God himself, the slow to anger God, had to come confront Cain directly. He said this, "Why are you so angry? Why is your face downcast? Why you got bitter beer face? If you do what's right, you'll be accepted. But if you don't do what is right, pay attention, because sin is crouching at your door." It's just what we read from Paul. The devil's there. waiting to seize that opportunity. Sin desires to have you, but you must rule over it. You and I must rule over. We must master our anger. It might not happen overnight, but we need to earnestly be about the business of mastering that anger. And here's a few ways that we could do that. First of all, become someone who is slow to anger. Learn the character of God in your life. And we already talked about that from the perspective of Exodus 33 and 34. But James, one of the brothers of Jesus, said this: be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. So we don't want no anger. That's impossible. We don't want explosive anger. That's destructive. We don't want go anger, like so to speak, like anger that just sends us and drives us forward without even thinking about it. We want slow anger. Slow your pace. When things get fired up, slow down. That should be a big indication for you to just take a step back and take a breath. Don't live with such urgency that you end up steamrolling others. Slow your pace. Slow your process. Engage the prefrontal cortex. It's there for a reason, and it's a really important asset for us to be able to really think through what is actually happening under the surface so that we can engage in our relationships more effectively. And slow our passion. Slow the pressure that you feel to defend that ego. That pressure that wants to get even or be on top. Slow that passion that presses against others, pushing them down so you can gain position. Become a person who is slow to anger. Let God teach you that. Also, set apart space, set apart topos for Christ. Don't make room for the devil, but do make room for the Holy Spirit. Make room for compassion and justice and love and peace and all those good values. The best way I know how to do this, and I've said this to many people over the years, I'm going to say it till I die, because I really have found such value in these two words, curiosity and kindness. If you've heard me say that before, it's okay. We all need time to hear those messages over and over again. In the midst of those places where you're angry, be curious. Ask yourself, ask those you're in relationship with a lot of questions about why it's there, where it comes from, how it got there, what happens when it gets triggered. There's all kinds of questions that you can ask. Be curious about what actually goes on inside of you and inside of those that you love. And then once you discover the answers to those questions, those answers you may be real thrilled about because you may feel super justified. Hey, dial it back. And those answers may give you a sense of brokenness and woundedness, like, oh man, I didn't know that this sin lived in me. I didn't know that there was such yuck in here. That's okay. The second word is super important. Be kind regardless of what answers you find. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to other people in that process. We're all growing through this together. And we live in a culture that's hell-bent on violence. So the milieu we swim in all the time encourages us to be just the opposite of what God calls us to do. So live by these words, curiosity and kindness. So when you go to bed and you need to address an issue, but you're like, we need to sleep a little bit more than we need to talk about this issue, make sure and affirm your love. If you have to stop talking about an issue for some reason, make sure that the issue doesn't get to be the centerpiece. Your relationship gets to be the centerpiece. Affirm your love and then attend to the issue responsibly. You got to come back and deal with the issue. You can't just sweep it under the rug hoping that it'll magically disappear. You got to own your stuff. And I can think of no better way to set apart space, topos for Christ, than through prayer. Just cast yourself on his mercy. Open your heart to him. Like, he will help you so much in the moment or outside of those crisis points where you're thinking about it. Paul said in another letter that he wrote from prison, let the peace of Christ rule your hearts. That's what setting apart space for Christ can do. Help him rule our hearts so we can rule that anger in us. The last thing is do good in love. Jesus said to love our enemies. Pray for those who persecute us. That's a high bar. That's a high standard. Think about your enemies. I don't care if they're sitting next to you or they're across the world. Pray for our enemies. Jesus was so fired up at one point in Mark 3, we see him be so frustrated with what the Pharisees were living by legalistically, trying to prevent him from healing someone, that he just went and healed this man and said, no, we are not living by the letter of the law. We have a heart posture of love, and I'm healing this guy of a withered hand. And it happened. He showed up in front of Lazarus' tomb, and it says the shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. It doesn't mean he was just crying. It means he was spitting mad. He was infuriated about what death was doing to his friends, and he was tired of it, and he called Lazarus out of the tomb. Do good in love. We cannot love issues. We can love people. And the love of people reveals to us the way to deal with issues. Paul said, over all these virtues, put on love, because love binds all of the virtues together in perfect unity. And that's what we see in Christ on the cross. I'd invite you to join me as we receive communion today. You can take out that little wafer, and it's a symbol of Christ's body that was broken for each of us. I love how Jesus, in the moments, the hours before the greatest struggle any human has or ever will go through, he gathered his disciples together, and John says that he demonstrated the fullness of his love by washing their feet and by sharing this simple meal with them. He gave them bread and said, this is my body that's broken for you. So let's receive the bread today, remembering his love for us. He also passed around a chalice of wine. We have kind of a token of that in this grape juice. It's a symbol, he said, of his blood that was shed for us. I cannot think of any greater display. I'd never even thought about it until I prepared for this message. I cannot think of a picture that's more perfect than Christ on the cross for the words slow to anger. He would rather die than call down a battalion of angels to defend him. That's how we need to be too. It's so inspirational. I feel convicted and fired up all at the same time when I think about it. It's his blood that rescues us, that covers us, that saves us from sin and death. And so let's receive that juice today with gratitude. Will you stand with me and let's pray? Jesus, we thank you so much. We give you all the glory. You deserve so much credit for all you've done. You are a master and a genius, and we stand in awe like Moses did. We bow down to worship you because your holiness, your goodness, your love, and even your anger are inspiring to us. I pray that you'll help us in this real important area of our lives and our relationships, God. We give you praise today. It's in your name we pray. Amen.